So we're looking forward to this session, a new framework for design-centric ecosystem for higher growth. This panel is brought to you by Cumulus Association. Cumulus is the International Association of Universities and Colleges of Art, Design and Media. It currently consists of 357 members from 66 countries, initiated to build a dynamic and flexible academic forum to bring together top-level educational institutions worldwide. Our panelists for today's session are Professor Ravi Poovaiah, Professor of Emeritus Fellow, Industrial Design Center, IIT, Bombay. His current pedagogic as well as research and design interests are in fields related to interaction design. Ms. Mamta Rao, presently the Dean of National Institute of Design, Bengaluru campus. She's the principal faculty in IT integrated design streams and is the discipline leader for master's program in interaction design. Currently, she's a member of the Governing Council and Senate of NID. Mr. Krishan Jagota, he's the head of product design, Sideways Consulting and president of Mumbai chapter Association of Designers of India. He's helping businesses innovate through design thinking and execution. A brand strategist and industrial designer from NID at heart, Krishan is an amazing illustrator who can draw using both his hands, an awe-inspiring magician who can surprise people with tactful tricks. Equipped with his experience in Germany, Ms. Archana Surana. She is a design educator, mentor, and social entrepreneur with 28 years of experience innovating in design education. She successfully carries forward the legacy of 22 years as the founder and director of Arch College of Design and Business. She is the elected board member in the Cumulus Executive Board the year 22-25 and is a member of the CII National Committee of Design India and CBSE Committee on Skill Development. She represents Arch at various national and international platforms.
And today's session has three very strong keywords. It talks about new frameworks for the future. We're going to be looking at design ecosystems. And high growth is something that we all aspire for. While these are three keywords that every youth wants to relate and connect with, the industry is looking at what would these new paradigms mean. We have experts who are with industry experience and bringing the academia and the industry together with research opportunities. And on the other hand, we have these new possibilities in the digital media where interaction design, user experience, user interaction is the future. Looking at these aspects today, I have these insights that I am looking at from an experience that will come from Ravi Poovaiah with 4 decades of being into design education. Ma'am herself being for almost 3 to 4 decades again into design, having moved from SPA to be at the NID. And Krishan, a very interesting engineering background and getting into hardcore product design and working now with a lot of artificial intelligence, which he calls as shared intelligence. These are going to be something that, I'm sure that each one of us is waiting to really hear what Professor Ravi has to say. How we can take design to the masses, to the school education system, impact more lives to create an ecosystem that will nurture high growth. Professor Ravi.
Thanks so much, Archana. Thanks again for inviting me here. Glad to be here. Okay, it seems to be like a really nice happening event. Okay, so let me try to put the context in place. Okay, so I think first I'll try to very short history of how design happened in our country. Okay, followed by the stakeholders involved in this, in this journey. Plus third is we need to look at the future, what's going to happen. So the kind of ecosystem which is happening within our country. So I think these are the 3 steps, to put it very, in context. If you look at India, right, India was a place of arts and culture for a very long time. If you look at it, our GDP was the highest in the world at one point of time. Okay, so that means that the essence of crafts and arts was inbuilt into the system itself. So when we got our independence, and also the industrialization which happened in the West, we needed to adopt it to make our lives better, right? So some of the initiatives we don't really realize, it's actually the initiatives have come from the government. For example, the setting up of the NID as an idea itself, and then funding it for it to happen. Similarly with the school where I am, even IITs were actually formulated by thinking behind saying that the country needs institutions which can take it forward in terms of technology. And they managed to house a design school within that context, okay? So, in some sense, we have to be thankful to the government for having that vision. If you look at media and entertainment, the applied art schools have played a very major role. And these are very old schools, okay? So new schools came in during the 60s, okay? And I think the context was also important. It was a phase of social, development. The focus was on that and not really on industrialization. So the first time, the designers started, making a difference to the country was from the 90s onwards in a very large context, okay? But I think the 2 or 3 decades before that gave ample opportunity for institutions like NID and IDC to experiment, call people from abroad, collaborate, think of things that are good for the country.
How relevant do you see that, will design thinking be? How will it be able to nurture creativity?
Before I get to creativity, I will just talk a little bit on the layers of design, right? What you see as the outermost layer is something that we see with our senses, the visceral part of design. So design operates at the visceral part, which is the aesthetics and how it's composed together. Design also operates at the behavioral part, right? How easy is a product to use, how friendly it is, how durable it is, how affordable is it. So there are a lot of these things. The third layer of design, and these are not my words, I really get inspired by Don Norman, who talks about these 3 layers of design. And the final third layer is reflective level of design. Essentially, creative thinking doesn't happen in vacuum. So what is the inspiration for creative thinking? So if you were to design or put together an ATM, I would suggest please go and observe a lot of people using those ATMs. That's where you might get some inspiration. So I think designers take a lot of inspiration from the context around them, right? And that context helps them frame a problem, what Sir was telling. How do you frame this problem very innovatively? For example, let's say somebody asked me to put together a design for a bank and at an enquiry counter. I could simply take the problem the way it is, or I could study the bank and then I might realize it's not about putting a software together. It's about, just putting one person to take care of the queries and the back office work, right? So the context, the kind of context that you will study and observe and how you will frame a problem, I think that also is a part of creative thinking.
Tell me, Krishan, what you've been doing, because the workshop today itself was such an aha moment when we really saw that how AI could be a whole new opening to a new beautiful future for all of us.
I think that's also very rooted in humans. Everything that we do is interdisciplinary. Somebody's taking care of electricity and water supply here, which I don't have to be bothered about, but I'm dependent on them. And so are they dependent on us for this event to be a big success, for example. Secondly, I think it goes back to how Yuval Harari calls it in his book, Sapiens, that we are the only species that controls fire. And as a result, we can chill. We can sit down and just talk. You call this chat a fireside chat. Now the wolf and the tiger is scared of us in the night because we can show them fire. And as a result, agriculture is born. As a result, we can grow a potato and a tomato basis where we want it to grow. As a result, we decide professions. We say, okay, you are an engineer, you are a designer, you are a mathematician, and so on and so forth. So this structured approach actually ensures safety in our society. So the idea of a structure in education is actually ensuring the next generations will be foolproof in their survival, in their everyday approach, in their living, right? At the same time, the profession that we guys are in, we actually are people who asked questions and broke away from the box that the world was putting us in. We actually are people who said, oh, we don't want to be the usual. And we came out. So we are constantly seeking this change. So as a young designer coming in and wanting to become even, guided somewhere, the same structure could have a loophole of turning them into yet another template. So you come out of the usual disciplines of engineering and management and the disciplines we are more used to hearing in our country to this creative world. And unfortunately, I see it in design institutes as I go back to my alma mater also, that there are these pamphlets that students bring. I am a UI UX designer, I'm a product designer, I'm a graphic designer, I do everything. Starting at a very young age, because if a young boy installs Facebook at the age of 18, why shouldn't design thinking come at the same age? If a young boy or a girl is on Snapchat at the age of 13, why shouldn't, forget about engineering, it's still, but creativity is at our play. We pick up crayons, we break crayons, we draw a tree, how we want at that young an age. Then why was it even surprising to not have design curriculum as a part of education at a young age?
What do you see as possibilities for the youth of this nation? On a global level, they can make an impact and create that kind of the real voice of design that would be what the Japanese today call it Society 5.0. And on the other hand, we have the metaverse, which is talking about a whole new decentralized economy and a world which will be all without boundaries.
Totally agree with you. The next generation has to be the one which is creative, which has this inquiring mind. And that's, I think, a very, very important point of it. Okay, so I think there are many, little bits of ecosystem which is getting developed. Okay, first is, be innovative. Okay, so that's a term which is being used everywhere. So you want to create that innovative ecosystem, in the universities, in the schools, okay, at other places. So that's one way of looking at it. In fact, the ministry has a cell for innovation now. They think that design and innovation can make a big difference to our country. So it's both a question of, the students having the confidence to create something on their own. Okay. The second, I think the push is that they're saying if you can start something on your own, okay, it actually starts a whole family of people who are trying to look in that direction. So it gives employment, it develops skills, then you have to actually look at doing something new. Okay, so that ecosystem is a very, very important ecosystem, and it's probably part of the startup ecosystem. And the question about, taking inputs from the West, I think it is because that design really matured and happened in the West. Industrialization itself happened over there, and we were followers. Okay, so it takes a while for a country to mature and get confidence. And if you look at India, it's at a stage we are having that confidence now.
Where do you see this fusion, this marriage happening between, and how can that our youth can embrace that? Because I think it's very important that our people now speak the language which the world can also relate and understand with.
We are definitely a country where our parents and our grandparents take charge of values, instilling in us from a very young age, where especially doing research for Disney, we had met over 150 kids and their parents. And this is what we heard, that they can go to the school and learn about math and physics, but they have to learn values from home. Now, while this is a great fundamental that is instilled in young India, there are certain traps. When you say money, most middle class talks about money as an evil. When you talk about fame, most spiritual and religious practices tell you that to be super famous is meaning you're superficial, right? And we come from a heritage of doing the job, especially as creative people, and not bothering about ownership, right? You ask who's the architect of Qutub Minar. Does anybody know about the architect of Qutub Minar here? But everybody knows who's the king who got it made. But if you ask about, like you said, an architect who made Chandigarh, you'll say Le Corbusier. So when it is about people from the West, yes, they take pride, and why not? If you've come up with something that is so beautiful that the world must celebrate, the art and the artist should be held together. The artist needs recognition, and that is changing. We come from a place where we never identified as individuals. We believed in a joint family, we believed in a tribe, we believed in togetherness. That is why you still have artisans of Rajasthan doing things together as a community. And you preserve that heritage, no one artisan is called out. However, at the same time, I see in other fields like advertising, like music, like Bollywood, we have individual stars. And my personal thought is it is because we deal on that side with retail economy. The aspect of business that talks directly to the consumer requires a hero. The aspect of business that is back-end maybe does not require a face. Now that the world is so gradually joining hands and there are content creators, we have NAS Academy, we have so many other people, the faces of individuals have become important. And so here is an opportunity actually for young India to bridge the gap of ownership in design and cultivate that as a habit of celebrating yourself out there, not just nationally, internationally with the platforms like these that we have. And I think we are on our way to do that.
Where do you see an opportunity in terms of collaboration and cooperation, and how easily we can get our youth to adjust to both these two universes, the verses, rather?
We have this infrastructure and facility that government has invested in, and we do have places which is makers spaces, right? The other thing that we have very strong right now, and we always had, is context, right? The kind of diversity in India and the kind of varied problems or contextual things that you see in India, you don't see anywhere in the world. We are a very diverse society, which means we have a fertile ground to see what is it that we can do in various domains. It could be domains of agriculture. There's hardly any designed interventions that we've been doing. Now, agriculture is also embracing modernity. It's becoming technology enabled. You have hydroponics, aquaponics. So with our context and the new technologies that are coming in, I will say there's a lot of scope for innovation, putting the two together. But innovation doesn't come easy, let me tell you. Innovation doesn't come by just sitting on a chair and procrastination, whereas I'll do this, I will do that. I think we have to go to these maker spaces, have a network of friends who inspire, begin to collaborate with them. So it could be an engineer, it could be a designer, architect, whoever. I think these multidisciplinary, so change this place where you hang out. So I think these maker spaces should become your space where you will hang out, you will nurture your thought process, you will interact, you will do a lot of peer learning.
As you talked about design thinking, critical thinking, what are your views on ecological thinking in terms of ecology, keeping the nature in factor? So if you want to, if you incorporate design thinking in schools, what about you incorporate design thinking and ecological thinking both in the schools? By thinking whatever you make or whatever you develop, keeping nature as a factor in that segment. So what are your views on the same?
Just to make it clear, design thinking is not chaotic, right? It is actually structured thinking. It's a process, okay? So which has some steps that you can follow, and that typically helps you in solving a problem.